our opinion of what it will take is that we need this kind of wide range of expertise to kind of make space resources work, make space mining work. There are technical challenges and there are legal challenges and there's business structure challenges, but I don't think there's any one place where it's clear, like, we fix this, we solve this particular problem and it all works. Like, there isn't one technical challenge, there's many. It is not just technical challenges, it's also structural, like how do you finance a business where there's no predecessor, as an example.
Right.
Well, we're like this other business, like this other mining firm, but it's not, it's brand new stuff. There's a lot of opportunities for lots of different people.
We are back with another episode of the Cold Star Project. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. This is Dr. Chris Dreyer of the Colorado School of Mines, and we booked this, I think in November we had a chat. And
yeah, it was a while ago.
Man, this came up quick. I'm like, yeah, the weeks go by fast. So Dr. Dreyer here, he has a PhD in mechanical engineering, none of your fluffy foo-foo degrees there. This is real legit mechanical engineering degree. And he is the Associate Director of Engineering at and co-creator of the Center for Space Resources at the Colorado School of Mines. The big reason why I was delighted to connect way back when was asteroid mining is a personal thing for me, right? It's like a place I see myself eventually in my crazy visions in my head. And so to see, oh my gosh, Colorado School of Mines and the Center for Space Resources have an online asteroid mining essentially training program, it was astounding. I was like, wow, this is yet another real thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's we do, and we're doing asteroid mining work, particularly with Trans-Astra and Joel Sercel. But realize, we call it space resources for a reason. It's asteroids, it's moon, the moon, it's Mars, it's mineral resources, but it's also about other ways we can use space and use resources of space, like manufacturing and microgravity. For instance, is a thing. So we take this kind of broad view of what are resources of space. And that frankly includes things we've been doing since the dawn of the space age, like solar power. It's a resource of space. We don't think of it that way, but we don't think of it as being the same as asteroid mining. But it does fit into kind of the spectrum of what we consider and teach. But our focus is on the new things, the use of minerals and volatiles to create brand new capabilities in space.
Well, very cool. I'm curious then, and I'm going to change my question here then. How did you personally get involved with the space resources field then?
Well, I basically wanted to do something in space and space related from when I was young, before college and teenager. And I went and got a mechanical engineering degree and started working as an undergrad in labs at my undergraduate university, Drexel University in Philadelphia. They were doing some things with some NASA folks in studying combustion in space. Okay, so this is a long story. That's where it starts. And in a way, you're using in studies of combustion in space, you're using microgravity as a tool to better understand combustion. But you're also studying kind of the fire safety for space stations and spacecraft. That eventually led to my graduate work, and there was more work in microgravity combustion. There's also an internship at NASA Glenn along the way in this, again, a microgravity combustion group. There was a group here at Mines kind of working in the similar field. It's actually a NASA-funded center for the commercialization of combustion science on the space station. And that brought me to Mines as a postdoc initially. Then it kind of developed into a full-fledged research professor with some of my own funded research as PI. And at the same time, around the same time I came here, there were other faculty at Mines working in exactly space resources and space mining. And one of the most prominent ones was a guy named Mike Duke, who came from, he would come to Colorado to retire, but wanted to continue doing some research on the side. He was he's a geologist who worked at the Johnson Space Center since the 70s. He had a long career there. He was at one time sometime in the 70s. Well, at one time he was the lunar curator, the lunar rocks that were brought back. And he was involved with, as a young guy with Apollo. So, and during the 70s and 80s and 90s and even through the noughts, he was a prominent person in promoting the use of resources in space. And there's a number of other people who were kind of prominent during that time, but he came to mines to retire. He knew about School of Mines, and he basically helped us develop the field. And I began to kind of get involved with him in his research, and and that's kind of where I got more introduced directly into space resources. Again, my kind of graduate research had been in microgravity combustion studies, and there's a way in which that's also use of resources, but microgravity being one. But really at that time, kind of in 2005, began to move more and more towards the mineral resources, like mechanisms for excavating the lunar surface. My other kind of background in school and as a mechanical engineer was more of a thermal sciences background, which has also helped me in kind of transitioning into asteroid mining, where a fundamental issue with asteroid mining is that you got to heat the material to release volatiles. So my mechanical thermal sciences background and fluid mechanics kind of have been used there. So it's just kind of been a continual progression from actually going long back. I wound up being here long enough that we reached a point where we realized we were doing enough research in this area. There's enough growing interest that we should start this graduate program. Things have kind of taken off from there, both for our program, number of students in it are just tremendous, and some new research projects are really getting rolling here really fast.
Well, very cool. So how then exactly did you develop the program? I mean, first of all, the whole curriculum for the course, how do you go about creating something that hasn't existed at all before? What do you use as a baseline, right?
Yeah, well, we use there's a couple different things we use, and one of them is there's terrestrial experience in how you explore, how you define where you have a resource and establish if your resource is a reserve or just a potential resource. And there's some basic technologies you need to develop. There, in some places in space, we can kind of use some terrestrial experience to understand what technologies we might have, like excavation on a planetary surface isn't too different from excavation on Earth. Some of the minerals are similar, and so we can imagine processing them in similar ways, except we have to exclude certain things, like we don't have a lot of water available in most places, so we're not going to do, on Earth we use water a lot for separation and processing. So we do have to conceive of new things. So there's terrestrial practices that we're kind of, by analogy, saying, well, this is how we might apply it in space. There's other environments where we have to conceive of completely new things. And in that sense, there's researchers who have been thinking about this for decades. You can go back, you can find mining, lunar mining concepts from the 50s. And there were a number of things that again, Mike Duke and his colleagues had compiled and put together in some publications in the 80s and 90s that really are great references. Clearly one you should look at, it's multi-volumed. There's 5 volumes of the SP509 series. That's the NASA designation of the particular series. It kind of summarizes the thoughts from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. So there's people have been thinking about this for a long time, and one of our starting points is what the thinking within those last couple decades. Then we're adding in some kind of other practices. There's particularly kind of a phrase or something that Mike Duke put together at one of our conferences. So actually, the conference that we mentioned is called the Space Resources Roundtable, that Mike founded, and then we've continued since now, like we're somewhere in the high teens and kind of number of times we've held it. And the Space Resources Roundtable is a place that people thinking about how to use resources of space would get together to talk about the field. Like, what do we need to develop? What are the barriers to making this happen? And so there's a lot of work people have done, and that's kind of within the volumes of what's presented at the roundtable over years. And one of the things Mike said in the very first roundtable was to develop space resources, you would need, you need to identify a resource, you need technologies to acquire the resource and make it into a product, and you need customers. And he also said, customers are the most important. And it all has to be put together into a plan, a cohesive plan. So we teach that way. We talk about the resources of what's known to be out there. We talk about potential technology that could be used to acquire and process it. As best I can, kind of talk about what are the state-of-the-art examples in this. A lot comes from the work that NASA's been doing over many years in excavation, in extraction of oxygen from regolith, and other kind of processes to produce methane for rocket propellant, for example. And in terms of customers, talk about who are the potential customers. One of the first customers should be transportation companies that could refuel rockets in space, and therefore get more out of their rockets. You might be able to have kind of a distributed lift scenario where you refuel in LEO, or maybe it's somewhere else in space, and then that carries on your vehicle further. If you do this, you can put more mass on the rocket on the pad, more payload mass, because you plan to, you plan to have less fuel than you would today, because you plan it out that you're going to refuel at some point in space. And then there's other things like a big area of use of space resources has been focused on Mars missions, human astronaut exploration of Mars, where you make propellant on the surface of Mars for perhaps full return to Earth, but at least to get off the surface of Mars back into orbit. And of course, that was kind of part of the plot of The Martian. But Andy Weir was actually reading about this that had been discussed for decades in NASA literature about exactly that. Well, NASA literature, as well as folks like Bob Zubrin, who talked about that concept in the 90s. But he too was kind of building off of what others were talking about of use of resources. So like that's one clear customer: make propellant from Martian resources to move astronauts from the surface into orbit, minimum step. Then a couple years ago, ULA had proposed some pricing concepts for refueling ULA upper stages in space, and proposed prices they'd be willing to purchase propellant at different locations in space. The person who was really behind that was George Sowers. He was a vice president of ULA at the time. He's now a faculty member in our space resources program. Teaches about this kind of propellant, particularly in systems engineering as well. It teaches a class in systems engineering for that's focused on space resources. So we kind of use a lot of the history of what people have done, developed, and thought about of how this would happen as our basis of teaching the field. And we anticipate that things are going to be changing a lot in the next couple of years. We'll be continually updating and talking about the new events that occur with some of the things coming up with where NASA is funding development of resource extraction and processing that could be new examples of the state of the art space resources.
Right, and I go right back to Joel Sercel and the mini bee and testing that out.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like that's his concepts are, I think, the most complete and workable solutions for asteroid mining that we've ever seen.
In my paltry point of view, I will agree with that. So how do you know when you've got enough critical mass for a center? Do you get funding from the school or private funding? Or, I mean, you were saying you had been there long enough, you had this partnership with other instructors in that, and then something happens.
Well, technically our center has existed for a long time. The Center for Space Resources is the direct successor to the original microgravity combustion center called CSACS, and there have been space resources work within it for 20 years, and it's been the Center for Space Resources for about 10. And the way centers work here at the School of Mines is with the permission of the administration. A group of faculty say there's kind of a center of mass for a particular research topic, and they might go after a particular base funding. The CSACS was actually funded by NASA under a microgravity commercialization award that lasted 5 years or something like that. And the goal there was actually to commercialize use of the space station. And they funded several centers around the country. We were one. And so that got things rolling. There's a base of funding. You submit new grants, you get new funding, you bring it through the center. And the practices here is that there's a small amount of indirect costs that come back to the center for, to promote the center itself, to further kind of to pay for some administrative costs within the center, and seek out and win new funding to keep funding continually coming in.
Right.
So
okay.
Yeah, a lot's been based on NASA grants as the main source. A lot of those are in collaboration with companies such as TransAstra. There's also a couple other companies we're working with, Maxar, Oxyon, are coming up right now, and a couple of small businesses routinely with SBIRs and STTRs.
Okay, so that gives a pretty clear picture. Hey, this is Jason Kanigan, the host of the Cold Star Project and the founder of Cold Star Technologies. I've decided to do something new. I've started doing daily update videos on who I met and what I learned the previous day in the space field. And it's a great sort of follow me thing. You can learn what I learn. I'm meeting a heck of a lot of people and learning a lot of things really fast. And the space field is really disparate. There are tons of nooks and crannies to go into and explore, from legal, operational, regulatory, compliance, and gosh, the end customer. Who would have thought about that, right? So you can sign up for this. If you go to coldstartech.com/MSB, that's short for Make Space Boring, the mission we're on, then you can sign up, and in your email you will get a daily notification that the new video has been posted. I'm also thinking about doing some branded mini courses and summarizing papers as I'm able to. So those will be some goodies that are in there as well. So if you're interested in that, go to coldstartech.com/MSB and join us on the mission to make space boring. Now back to the interview. So you decided to run this course online instead of in class, in person. How did that decision come about? What were the reasons for it?
Yeah, well, we did, when we started, we thought we would have, the traditional class in a classroom, but we thought we were doing that. But we realized there were a couple people we wanted the opportunity that people at companies particularly could also join our class, but do it remotely. So that's where Angel, the Dr. Angel Abun Madrid, and I started saying this should be do a classroom with some people remote. The school has actually made a big push to have a bigger online presence and was offering a lot of new things online. So they'd founded a group called the Trefny Center to design and promote online courses at the School of Mines. And when consulting with them, they pointed out something that immediately I completely agreed with, and because I've been doing some teaching over the years, but my main duties have been research. And that is that when you have a classroom of people and you have some people online, you really teach to one group or the other. So one of the groups is getting your actual instruction, and the other group is getting some inferior version of your instruction. And that if we really want to kind of reach out beyond the university, we should go fully online. So from the beginning, we kind of bought into that idea immediately. It seemed really clear to me. And so from the beginning, we were offering it only in video conference, kind of the way we're doing this right now, and using Zoom and using also our online tools, Canvas, to manage the course. And the first 2 semesters were of essentially very traditional, other than all the lectures were in video conference. And we had people all over, some people like local, but they would have had to do a 40-minute drive to get to campus, so now they cut some commute out of their day, but also people in other parts of the country. And we then in fall of 2018 went to the full online version, where we officially announced the full course, the program. By full online, it has some other aspects. Instead of 16-week semesters, there's 8-week semesters. That too is kind of a recommendation from the Trefny Center, and it's borne out to be true. It is a full 16-week course, but compressed into 8 weeks. So it's a bit intense, but the idea there is for 2 months, a professional quite possibly could rearrange your schedules. It might take weekends and several nights during the week to do this course, but you've got, it's just 8 weeks. As opposed to 16 weeks, it can be it's a more significant, much more difficult to rearrange your schedules. It lasts 4 months instead of 2 months. It's also actually pretty intense for the instructor to need to turn around a significant amount of grading within a short period of time instead of a couple weeks. So that kind of making it short and intense. And then there's more online content. Lectures are in pre-recorded videos. We still do video conferencing to have mostly a discussion with students about kind of the question and answer period you normally would have in a lecture. We have guest lectures as well. The field is so broad that there's really there's just simply no individual that can reasonably claim to be an expert in everything relevant to space resources. You need planetary science, you need spacecraft systems, You need brand new stuff that you haven't seen in spacecraft before, like excavation and processing systems. And you also need a bit of like a business and economics savvy to understand who the customers are and what they'd be interested in. And also you need to understand the law and policy of space resources, like what is the law governing use of resources and ownership of resources. So we have a lot of guest lecturers who I've arranged to sit in, provide a lecture, and then sit in with the class to do question and answers periods through video conferencing. So that's where we are today. We're currently doing the 4th semester of fully online, the 6th time teaching this fundamentals class total. We have, I believe right now, 84 students in the program at some position within their degree. We're routinely having 20 to 30 students enter each semester so far. We're expanding, actually. We just started. We'll have a search for a new faculty member of the program who the plan is it's a geologist we're seeking to be a tenure track professor in geology, presumably with a planetary science background, working in space resources would be the goal. There's a few people we know of who kind of fit that description. Might be more that we're not really, we'll see who applies. And that would kind of shore up one of our areas of adding planetary science, a formal planetary scientist to the program, in addition to kind of the 3 people in the program are all engineers. So,
okay. So it's an iterative process, figuring this course and delivery out. It's been a little different every time. You're adding to it. Students learn a lot more than just technical things. They learn a bit about the space law and some design and whatnot. What technologies are being developed right now for taking advantage of resources in space?
Yeah, so there are kind of 2 to 3 areas of new technologies being worked on by various groups. I would kind of classify them as extraction methods that would include excavation. As excavation generally is about the regolith surfaces of the moon or Mars. It's kind of and using that resource. Then there's a couple different extraction methods. So once you have the raw material, there's a method to remove, alter it and kind of extract something from it. And then there's further processing after that raw material extraction step. So in some of the so thinking that kind of is a bit sequential in that kind of first area of excavation, there's different excavation robotics that have been worked on. I would say there's been in one of the examples of the state of the art would be the particular excavator from the Kennedy Space Center and a group called the Swamp Works developed this bucket wheel excavator. But there's also in that excavation step, there can be, say for asteroid work, there's the transastra concept that uses intense sunlight to excavate while simultaneously doing the extraction step to produce, to heat the material to produce water vapor from the hydrated minerals. Sometimes some of the processes kind of separate those steps, but in the transastra concept, they're combined. You excavate and extract at the same time. I know that like at Michigan Tech, there's some work going on extraction concepts for Martian gypsum. So there's deposits that are seen that they're like gypsum, but they're a hydrated mineral, and they're working on a process that uses basically a pressure washer type of approach of using water to extract from the material to recycle the water to extract more. And you have to break it up while also extracting the water that would be within the mineral. And I'm working with Transastro on the technique that's they've developed called optical mining. And that's by building a laboratory apparatus that is a test bed for it. We have a huge and intense xenon arc lamp that focuses light through a window into a vacuum chamber where it strikes a sample of asteroid simulants, and we have it excavates and heats it, and then volatiles that are produced, which are primarily water, are captured on a liquid nitrogen cooled cold trap. Some other things going on. There is work on the processing step. On the Mars 2020 rover, there will be a demonstration of basically it's electrolysis of the CO2 atmosphere, which will split CO2 into carbon monoxide and oxygen. This is one of the ways you could produce oxygen directly from the Martian atmosphere. And it'll be very likely, it's still a couple, it'll launch soon in a couple years before it's there or before it's operating. I don't know exactly when the turn on date will be, but it very likely will be the first extraterrestrial processing to occur, where we intentionally are trying to convert something from, its native natural state into a process state, which here would be oxygen. It's just a demo that in this case, oxygen won't be used for anything, but it'll at least take that technology and make it or show, raise its technology readiness level to a 9, that at least that unit and that size with those inputs, we can define really if it's possible. There's some new work getting started on water electrolysis that will be built for the moon. I'm also involved in working with George Sowers on a concept we've developed called thermal mining of the moon, which is a way to extract water, volatiles, ices directly off the surface of the moon. A couple others working on similar concepts that are related methods to, maybe not related, but other ways of extracting volatiles from the surface of the moon inside at the poles where we have permanently shadowed regions that capture volatiles. There's also work on there and kind of those regions. Then once we have extracted the water, before you might electrolyze it, you should clean it up. And there's work on processing and cleaning the water through an award Paragon has with NASA. So actually NASA in the last couple of years has started funding a lot of things for a couple different programs. There's a number of opportunities to submit proposals in SBIR and STTR now in this area, in areas of space resources. There's a fair amount of things being funded in this area through NIAC. That's where Joel Sercel got started with his concept. There's early stage innovation awards at NASA that fund things in this area as well. There's Next Step and Tipping Point Technology awards that relate to space resources. So the last couple of years has seen NASA really increase the pace at which it's funding new technology development for space resources.
Right, agreed. I went through the NASA NIAC grant list for 2019 and chased down everyone I could to try and book them to be on this show.
Right.
It worked out pretty well, actually. I'd say at least half of them were connectable, and most of them said yes. So I could find them, connect with them, and get them to come on. So we'll be hearing more about that. You can't afford to be second best. You need to be first, and that requires speed. Now, if you're thinking that growth is supposed to be slow and steady, frankly, the way I was taught back in the 90s in the operations management and business administration programs, you are too slow. We have to adapt. And in space, it's no different than anywhere else. People like to think they're special in space, and it is fun, all the stuff we get to work on, but business is business. The fundamentals nowadays are conservative growth is not good. You need to run as fast as you can and risk outstripping your supply lines, which means in our world, using up the capital that we've got. That's a risk. But there is no prize for second place. There certainly is no prize for third. If you want to scale operationally fast, come talk to us at Cold Start Tech. We are the process experts for scaling fast. Now back to the interview. I actually have a question here that isn't on our sheet, but it struck me. Okay, so we get a student, and I've talked to a student in the program, and he loves it privately. He any better? No. What? I guess who's the right person to be applying to get in, and then what happens when they get out? Like, what do they get out of the experience? Obviously, they're meeting people. The lectures are coming in. They're seeing the people who are in this field, and then how's it going to affect their job marketability or maybe research direction that they want to go in?
Yeah. Well, the right person. So we have, well, I'd say this is one of the things that maybe is most surprising about the program is the diversity of people in the program, mostly measured by their background, where they come from. There's a lot of engineers, but there are also entrepreneurs. There are kind of economic and policy folks, where there are also planetary scientists who see this as a field they want to work in. So I guess I had thought we really would just be engineers and planetary scientists, and I'm a little surprised by the number of actually, so it should include law. There's a couple lawyers in the program, law, policy, economics, and pure entrepreneurs who are interested. Say pure because a fair number of our engineers are also entrepreneurs who started businesses around technology development. And so the kind of range of people is broad. Our opinion of what it will take is that that we need this kind of wide range of expertise to kind of make space resources work, make space mining work. There are technical challenges and there are legal challenges and there's just business structure challenges, but I don't think there's any one place where it's clear, like, we fix this, we solve this particular problem and it all works. Like, there isn't one technical challenge, there's many. It's not just technical challenges, it's also structural, like how do you finance a business where you're going to where there's no predecessor, as an example. Right. Well, we're like this other business, like this other mining firm, but it's not, it's brand new stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities for lots of different people. Now, where'd you say? Oh, the other question is, where do you go afterwards? Well, I mentioned entrepreneurial activity. There are a fair number of entrepreneurs in the program. They're basically creating their own businesses that will be doing this. There are entrepreneurs such as TransAstra, or Joel Cell and TransAstra, that could be hiring in the at some point in the future. There are other. We've had there's other kind of established companies that have hired our graduates, like Honeybee Robotics. They're established as a spacecraft mechanisms company and as a drilling, as a mechanisms for space exploration company. Drills for NASA, the RAT tool on the Mars rovers, the development of scoops and robotic systems for many different systems and NASA's developing. They've hired our graduates. we have students in the program at Lockheed Martin, at other aerospace companies, where in a sense what they're doing is there's the anticipation that this will be a bigger field, and so they want to have a workforce that kind of is prepared. So there are a couple, there are places to be employed, and I would say, even if you're, I would say that even if you're going to go and work at a big aerospace firm, there's a sense of still being entrepreneurial. Like you're going to be doing this to sell yourself to a major company or to start your own firm because you believe it'll be of value. And I think it will be in the next couple of years that they'll be hiring our graduates for this. In terms of the entrepreneurs, to kind of get to the point where we're have I think in the next couple years we'll begin to see demonstrations of space resource technologies in space, and the first practical delivery of a product from space resources I think can happen in the next 10 years. But between now and then another decade, and maybe it's a major component of everything we do in space. Between now and then, kind of one thing is there are technologies we can develop today for looking forward to the future, where it's a major part of how space is done, that have value and uses today. There's a lot of crossover between space resource technology and, say, robotics and AI, of more complex systems operating in space that can multiple systems that can communicate to each other, with some way that interfaces to controllers on Earth, and other instrumentation, processing technology, propulsion technologies that are ready for space resources, that could be that have a profitable business plan today before we really have all the resource components developed or the technologies developed to really take full advantage of resources of space. Okay,
and this is a certificate program?
Oh yeah, so okay. Yeah. It's actually, there's 3 degrees. There's a certificate. There's a certificate, a master's, it's non-thesis master's, and there's a PhD. All can be taken online. So, and we're still kind of filling out the complete plan of all classes we will have. We have a number of classes. So we have the Space Resources Fundamentals, a systems engineering for space resources, projects, 2 project classes, kind of a 1 and 2 project class, and then a number of electives. And in terms of fully online right now, in electives is a space economics, space law. We're getting a space systems course started next fall. We've had a module within a couple other courses that are online here at Mines in manufacturing or advanced manufacturing offered online, and a life cycle analysis course offered online. And there are new classes we're developing. I'm forgetting about the planetary geology course as well. So there's a couple new ones planned that we'll be adding, at least 1 every semester. There's this is sufficient. You can complete the certificate and master's fully online now. The PhD takes a few more credits, and there's some issues about well, there is an online version of the PhD that we can offer if the individual kind of has the right resources to be distant and not online and complete a thesis. They could be admitted into an online PhD program, but there's also on-campus PhD, where primarily students working with us on funded research.
Okay, well, that sounds like fun. It really does. Where could people go to find out more about the program and maybe connect with you?
Yeah, well, our website, which is space.mines.edu.
All right. That
That
is
is mine, MINES. Yeah.
all right. Well, very cool. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'd like to have you back on in 6 months or something like that, and see what kind of new developments there are. I think that would be
Sure.
very cool if you're up to it. Uh, so people can go check that out. My guest today has been Dr. Christopher Dreyer. He's the Associate Director of Engineering at and co-creator of the Center for Space Resources at the Colorado School of Mines. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jason. It was fun.